If your spouse died tomorrow, and your first honest feeling, the one that comes before the grief you'd perform at the funeral, would be relief, you already know everything you need to know. You've known it for a long time. I'm 76 years old, and I'm going to say some things today that nobody at your church, nobody at your bridge club, nobody at your Thanksgiving table has the nerve to say to your face. I've been married. I've been widowed. I've been loved again after I thought that door was permanently closed. And I've sat across kitchen tables from enough women and men my age to know that a whole lot of people are living a very quiet, very convincing lie. And the saddest part is that the person they're lying to most effectively is themselves. So let me start there. The performance. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You've rehearsed it so many times it's become automatic. The smile that comes on just before you walk into a room together. The way you touch his arm in front of your daughter like it's something you do all the time. The anniversary post you spent 20 minutes writing because you needed it to sound true. And somewhere along the way, and this is the part that should scare you, somewhere along the way, you got so good at the performance that you sometimes lose track of which version of yourself is the real one. That's not living. That's something else entirely. I had a friend. We've known each other since our 40s. She's a few years younger than me, lives about an hour north. And she used to call me every few months. Same conversation every time. Her husband wasn't cruel. That's always what she led with. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't a drinker. He didn't chase other women. He just wasn't there. Not really. 22 years of coexisting in the same house, dividing up the calendar, sharing a bed the way you share a waiting room. Close enough to touch, but both of you looking at the door. She told me once that the loneliest she ever felt was not when she was alone. It was on a Sunday afternoon when they were both sitting in the living room reading, and she looked up at him, and she realized she could disappear from that room entirely, and it would be at least 2 hours before he noticed. 2 hours. She stayed for 12 more years after that conversation. And here's what I kept thinking about as those years passed. Her daughter, who is in her early 30s now, has never once brought anyone home to meet her. Not one person. In 10 years. And when my friend finally sat down and asked her about it, really asked her, her daughter said, quietly, without any drama, "Mom, I watched you. I know what it looks like when a woman makes herself smaller to fit inside someone else's life. I decided I'd rather be alone." That hit my friend like a truck, because she thought she'd hidden it. She thought the children didn't know. They always know. They may not have the words for it when they're 7 or 12 or even 20, but they're watching. They're building a blueprint. And the house they're going to build on that blueprint is already under construction, whether you like it or not. Now, I want to be fair, because I'm not here to tell you your marriage is broken or that you should do any particular thing. I'm 76 years old. I've made enough of my own mistakes to know that I don't get to judge anyone else's choices. What I am saying is this: if there's a version of your life that's true and a version that you perform, and those two things have drifted very far apart, that distance has a cost. A real, physical, measurable cost that your body has been tracking even when your mouth kept quiet. I'll get back to that. But first let me tell you about a man I knew through church. A good man, genuinely good, who stayed in a hollow marriage for 31 years because of a number. One number. He had it in his head that if they divorced, he would lose the house, the retirement account, and end up in some apartment eating soup from a can until he died. That was the movie playing in his head. And so he stayed, and he kept performing. And every year the number in his head got bigger and scarier, like a debt he'd been adding interest to without ever looking at the actual balance. His sister finally convinced him, this was maybe 5 or 6 years ago, to sit down with someone who actually works through the finances of late life divorce for a living. Not a lawyer trying to bill him. Someone whose whole job is to run the actual numbers for people in exactly his situation. You know what they found out? That between what he was already entitled to from his wife's pension, the way Social Security survivor benefits actually work in their state, and what a realistic split of their retirement assets would look like, he was going to be fine. Not rich, fine, livable, dignified. The number he'd been terrified of for 31 years was built on math from a decade he no longer lived in. He cried in that office, not from sadness, from 31 years of unnecessary fear finally leaving his body all at once. And here's what stayed with me about his story. He told me later that when he finally moved into his own place, small, nothing fancy, a second-floor apartment with a window that got good morning light, the first thing he did was make coffee, just for himself. And he stood at that kitchen window with his cup, and he didn't perform anything for anyone. He just stood there. And he said it was the first honest minute he'd had in 3 decades. I think about that a lot. The first honest minute in 3 decades. Now let me come back to something I said I would, because I meant it. Your body has been keeping score. I'm not talking about stress in a vague, general way. I mean the lower back pain that 3 different specialists have looked at and nobody can find a structural reason for. The teeth your dentist has been warning you about for years because you're grinding them to powder every night while you sleep. The appetite that disappeared around the same anniversary you stopped meaning it when you said the words. The insomnia that started the year you stopped dreaming about anything at all. That's not coincidence. That's not aging. That's your nervous system doing the math that your brain refused to do. There's research, and I'll mention it only because the numbers are genuinely startling. Out of Harvard, a study that followed people for over 80 years. And what they found about people living in emotionally hollow or high conflict marriages after 60 was not subtle. Accelerated cognitive decline, chronic inflammation levels that rival heavy smokers, an immune system so worn down by chronic low-grade distress that the body ages faster than people who live completely alone. Alone but at peace. Alone but at peace. And I want to sit with that phrase for a moment, because it used to terrify me. After I lost my husband Frank, this was 2004, heart attack, nothing anyone saw coming, I was alone for 13 years. 13 years. And I will not tell you those were easy years, but I will tell you that there is a kind of alone that is honest, that is clean, where you wake up in the morning and the quiet belongs to you, and you don't have to put anything on before you've had your first cup of coffee. I knew what I'd lost. I knew what real love had felt like. And that made me very clear about what I was not willing to replace it with. Some of the saddest conversations I have had in my 76 years have not been with people who were alone. They've been with people who were paired up, sitting right next to someone and utterly, completely invisible to them. We're comfortable. That's the sentence I keep hearing. We're comfortable. And I understand why that feels like enough. I do. But comfort is what you feel in an old recliner. It's not what a human being should settle for when they're describing 50 years beside another person who once made them feel like the whole room shifted when they walked in. Here's something nobody talks about. The people who stay and perform, they often think their partners don't know or don't care, but some of them do know. Some of them have known for years that something went cold, but they read the continued performance as acceptance, as contentment. Your silence isn't sacrifice. To the person living beside you, your silence looks like satisfaction, which means nothing changes. Because as far as they can tell, the arrangement is working. I had a conversation, maybe 3 years ago now, with a woman I've known for a long time, sharp as anyone I've ever met. Raised 4 kids, had a career, managed everything. And she told me she'd been having the same argument with her husband in her head. The same argument, word for word, all the injustices laid out, all the things she should have said, every single night before she fell asleep, for 15 years. 15 years of the same internal argument. Never once said any of it out loud, and her husband apparently slept just fine. I asked her what she was waiting for. She didn't have an answer. She said it had just become a habit, the argument, the silence, both of them. Habits that last 15 years stop feeling like choices. That's the danger. Now I want to ask you something, and I want you to sit with it before you rush past it. Not to answer it out loud, just to let yourself feel what you actually feel when I say it. If you could wake up tomorrow morning in a small, quiet space, just yours, and make yourself a cup of coffee, and sit at a kitchen table with the morning light coming in, and not perform anything for anyone, not manage anyone's mood, or brace for anyone's silence, or rehearse your face before you walk in the room, would that picture terrify you? Or would it feel, somewhere underneath all the guilt and all the obligation, like the first honest breath you've drawn in a very long time? You don't have to answer that to me. You just have to answer it to yourself. Because here's what I've learned from being 76 years old, from losing and loving and starting over when I was absolutely certain I never would again. The question isn't whether you stay or whether you go. I am not here to tell you what to do. What I am saying is that whatever you do next, you should do it fully awake, not out of fear, not out of a number in your head that you've never actually verified, not out of a performance that got so automatic you forgot it was a performance. Plenty of couples I know have gone through genuinely hard periods, hollow, distant, cold, and found their way back to each other, found something real again. That happens. It's real. But it only happens when at least one person stops performing and starts being honest. Not performing honesty, actually being it. And for some people, honesty leads them out. Not because they failed, but because they finally stopped lying. The obituaries. You mentioned them, or rather, I've been thinking about them. The way they all say devoted husband or loving wife, and how the thought of yours reading those same words, those exact, careful, sanitized words, fills you with something that isn't pride. I've noticed that too. I've thought about what I'd want mine to say. Not the performance version, the true version, the one where I actually showed up as myself for the people I loved. That's the version I want to live toward. Every morning I still have. You know what helped me most after George passed in 2022? And losing him broke me in ways I am still putting back together. What helped me most was a few conversations with a counselor who specializes in exactly what I was going through. Not because she told me what to do. She never did that. But because she helped me tell the difference between grief and guilt, between love and obligation, between staying because you want to and staying because you don't know who you'd be if you didn't. Those distinctions matter. They're not always easy to see from the inside. I think about the actuarial table sometimes. At 76, the math gives me maybe another 12 to 15 years, if I'm lucky. Maybe more. I've got friends who are going strong at 91, and I've got friends who didn't make it past 73. You don't know which kind you are until you find out. But what I know is that whatever time is left, I want to spend it real, awake, not running a performance that not a single person in my life is actually fooled by. Your kids know, your closest friends suspect. The only person genuinely convinced is you, and you're running out of time to stop convincing yourself. Whatever you decide, stay and rebuild something honest, or finally admit what you've been whispering to yourself in parked cars for 2 decades. Make the decision from truth, not from the performance. The performance has already cost you enough. If this found you at the right moment, I hope you'll share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if something in here hit close to home, I'd love to know. Leave a comment, tell me your story, or even just one word that describes what you're sitting with right now. I read every single one. And if you want to keep having these conversations, I hope you'll stick around, because I've got a lot more to say.